Hello and welcome to the Change Cafe. I'm your host Jane. In this episode, I'm joined by the wonderful Lisa Rangel, executive resume and LinkedIn profile writer for Chameleon Resumes, which was voted Forbes Top 100 career website. Here we tackle some tough topics around redundancy, job searching during a pandemic, dealing with rejection and overcoming fear. I'm so excited to share this interview with you. So get your coffee, champers and cocktail and get comfy. Hello, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me from across the pond as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Now, I've been following your work for some time. I've been on a couple of your amazing webinars. So you did a LinkedIn profile one and a CV writing. And I've actually been following your newsletter for some time. And your storytelling is incredible. And so first, I really just would love to know your background and where this wonderful skill of almost like telling people's stories through resume and cover letter writing came from.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. And thank you for being a reader for so long and a follower for so long. That's always very humbling to hear. I've Chameleon's almost 11 years old. In June, it'll be 11 years old. And prior to that, I was a recruiter for 13 years. So it's been sort of a mesh of different things that helped me evolve to where I am today. But, the storytelling element, I'd say, really came to be about 5 or 6 years ago when I just discovered copywriting. And some of the professional copywriters that I have followed over the years and learned from over the years, I think have brought out the storytelling element that I think I do, in clients' resumes, with our team, with the marketing that we do. It's really it's really like permission-based marketing, or intrigue-based marketing. People are just interested in the story, so they opt in, or they ask us to help them, or they hire us. So that part, it's been really exciting to kind of take that different angle to it. But prior to that, when I was a recruiter, I was a search firm recruiter for 13 years, and the clients of mine at that time were the companies who paid us fees to find them talent. And I quickly realized the resume was the conduit in which I was able to connect a candidate and that company who would pay me if they hired them. So I quickly learned that resume had to speak to that particular client's needs. And I feel that when the story of a candidate is told in such a way that is honorable to the candidate, what they're about, but also meets the needs of the employer, that's really when the success takes off. If it's too one-sided, if it's just all about the candidate, it's not connecting to the needs of the employer. And if somebody's really just solely catering to the need of the employer, they're not honoring themselves. And I think you really need both for it to be not only just a successful resume, but really a successful hire. So I feel like it's the root of where it comes from, and that's kind of how it all came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think reading through your stuff recently, because I saved some of the good juicy bits, and there was so much that I wanted to get through today, but I had to bring it down to some of the things that are really coming up for the women in my community.
Yes.
And some stuff they're grappling with right now.
Yeah.
Now, your words were, there is some heavy stuff going down, and this is not normal. And that is so true. And I think the question that's coming up quite a lot is there any point in searching right now? Is there any point in applying for jobs when we're in this situation?
I absolutely think that applying and searching now, if it's the right thing for a particular person, absolutely can happen. I think first and foremost, somebody has to evaluate what their own situation. Do they mentally need a break? Mental health first. Obviously, there's a reality for many of, they don't have the choice to work or continue to work. So I think it is a unique decision. But if that decision is leading someone to either want to search or have to search, I don't want them to be discouraged, as discouraging as the climate may seem to be. We have clients that have been getting hired over the last 8 weeks and hiring is happening. I mean, I think definitely for the year that there's going to be a net loss of jobs than there are hires being made, but that doesn't mean hires are zero. You know, I always try to tell people, I have this mantra of like, you know, you just have to find one job. You don't need to solve, you know, your country's unemployment problem. You don't need to solve, you know, the inequity in hiring. You just need to find one job. And if, you know, you control what you can control, which is how many times you reach out to people, who you reach out to, the quality of your communications, and you just do it on a day-to-day basis, that's, you know, it will eventually happen, you know, and you got to keep it on a very, you know, individualized level. And I think then it preserves your mental health, and that's really where you get some traction. And you start to see what's possible, and you absolutely can still hire, still look into today's climate. If you're needing to or wanting to, it's absolutely still possible.
Yeah. And let's get to the core of that. You've been through the recession in the 2008 before. You've been made redundant. Am I right in saying that? You were
I was laid off in 2009, 6 months after the crash in 2008. So it was definitely all, you know, frankly, my employer was very kind to keep me on for the longer period. They could have easily laid me off before. And then I ran a downtown New York City office during during 9/11 and then the subsequent financial, you know, crash after that. We wound up being in Midtown that day, but I was in New York City, and we ran an office, a staffing office down there too. So.
Yeah, and from those experiences, talking from those experiences, what would your advice be to other women who are now in that circumstance, who have either been made redundant or on furlough?
You know, I think some things that I've reflected on over the last, you know, few weeks is, and I certainly didn't know it at the time that I was going through it. It's definitely a reflection now. I can't even say I knew this in 2008, about 2001, if I'm really being blunt. Is, you know, I can now look back on how I reacted and how I handled things during 2001 and 2008. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I didn't do everything right, and some days really weren't so pretty, but you know, I just kept moving forward. And I think the key is, you know, and I think the thing that I did in both scenarios unconsciously really was, you know, no matter how afraid I was, I accepted the situation for what it was. And I tried to then, you know, do my business, make my money, whatever phrase you want to use, continue on within the confines that existed of the situation, you know, and, you know, respectfully, you know, I didn't just, you know, I sold in 2001, I sold staffing services. It was very sensitive about calling people, you know, I had to make phone calls to set up appointments at the time to go get the jobs, you know, from the hiring managers. And so I was very sensitive on how to do that. But I still did it, you know, because hires still needed to happen and they still had needs at the companies, but I wasn't, you know, brazen or insensitive or, you know, so I think you still just continue, but you just do it in a way that is sensitive to everyone around you and, you know, comfortable with your own head and your own heart. And the same with 2008. It was, you know, I was laid off and I didn't know at the time I was going to start a resume business, or 2009 when I was laid off. You know, I didn't know at the time I was going to start a resume business. I just started writing them. I was the breadwinner of my family. My husband was a stay-at-home dad at the time for 6 years. So when I was laid off, I lost, you know, we lost our only income and people needed work. So I was like, well, I can write these. All right. You know, and I just started writing them and I sent an email to, you know, 400 of my closest friends, and I lived off that email for almost 8 months. And that was really then the birth of this. I was like, well, I think I can do this as a business. And so you just keep plodding forward, and you don't know what's going to come of this, but there's so much ingenuity that will come from this period. Some of which may come from some of the people, you know, in your tribe. You know, if they can just keep moving forward, they're going to know, they're going to see a need in the marketplace. They're going to see a need within their own life that they can now realize other people have that same need and fulfill it. or they'll see a need that their company can stand up and fulfill, and then be the person who brings the idea to their company. You know, I mean, that phrase is somewhat, you know, cliche, but it's so true. You know, necessity is the mother of invention, and we're all in a great place of need right now. And a lot of people are gonna come up with some really new, cool things that will help us get through this in a better way. You know, without dishonoring everything that's going on around us. So I just think you just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that idea of keep moving forward and thinking of how you can pivot, how you can adapt to the circumstances whilst within the confines of what you're good at and where your strengths are. I think I read a statement in one of your emails, and I'm going to read it out because I loved it so much and it really spoke to me. And I think I love the truth of your writing, particularly.
Thank you.
And you said, when you understand the power of failing fast, knowing you are worth the next step and won't lose anything you really need, you're hitting the ball in a whole new playing field. I failed so many times, it's laughable, but every mistake had its own unique lesson, which I'm now truly grateful for. Wow.
Yeah, you're giving me chills. You know, people sometimes don't believe this, but prior to about 10, 12 years ago, I was afraid of everything. And sometimes it was paralytic to take the next step, or because all I saw was what I could lose. And I really had like a warped vision of what could happen if I tried. And, you know, and I was a workaholic, and I think sometimes just like my work in and of itself just took care of any risks that existed, because everyone always knew that I would work until it was done. And then about like 10, 12 years ago, I don't know, I think it just got exhausting to do, you know, and I don't know if it was the 2 kids and you're older and your parents that need stuff, and you just realize you can't do everything the way you used to when you were, you know, 25 and whatnot, or maybe I was just tired, I don't know. But I knew I wanted more out of my life, and I couldn't let the fear of it screwing up or not working, you know, just, I don't want to say hold me back, but just paralyze me anymore, you know? So it just, I don't know, it just sort of started, thankfully. And, you know, admittedly though, it started at the beginning, when I already lost my job, you know, and I felt like I had nothing to lose. I was really paralyzed to quit my job to start a business, and I empathize with anybody who has that fear, you know, but now that things have grown and it's, you know, successful, you know, I could see sometimes that fear of losing what I have creep back in. You know, it's really easy to be a rebel when you don't have a whole lot, you know. I think sometimes it's equally as courageous in a different way when you take risks, when you have stuff to lose too. And, you know, but I've come to terms with the fact that I don't really need a whole lot to live on. And, you know, thankfully we're good. We live well beneath our means. And if taking a risk to do something can, you know, help someone, help more people, help my team, you know, reach their goals and be fulfilled, you know, with their jobs, and just overall spread the good service and the good news and that sort of thing, then all right, just take the risk. What's the worst that'll happen, you know? So
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about rejection, because I think this is coming up as well. Rejection is a killer. It is a beast that is hard to deal with, and the constant rejection of no's.
I think dealing with rejection is twofold. I think sometimes we set ourselves up for rejection, you know, and I think we have to get better at preserving, you know, our heads in our hearts. And by that, I mean, you know, when we're reaching out to people, like, I try to advise clients when they're reaching out to people to not set themselves up to be rejected. Like, just, you know, keep it really light and easy. Don't put an expectation of a to-do list item on that person's, you know, on the recipient. You know, tell them that, you know, that they'll have time, you know, when they have time, that they'll reach out. And if you don't hear from them, they'll just reach out again 2-3 weeks, don't worry about it. And like, I just try to, because I think the days of saying like, hopefully I'll hear from you on Friday at 3 o'clock, like that's how we were taught to do letters, or I'll call you Friday at 3 o'clock. Like, it's how we were taught to do letters like a bazillion years ago. I think you're setting the expectation of somebody not being there at 3 o'clock when you call, you know what I mean? Or not getting back to you quickly, or, but I think if we can take the steps to preserve our hearts and our head by not setting ourselves up to be rejected in the first place in terms of how we communicate, I think that's one good step. And then the other step is, and I learned this when I was selling recruitment services, is control what I can control. I can only control how many emails I send, LinkedIn messages I do, phone calls I make, possibly snail mail. We're doing that nowadays, in strategic situations. But like, I can only control the outbound. I can't control who picks up the phone. I can't control who replies to my email. I can't control any of that. So, but if, I do enough qualitative outreach items, that's all I can control. And that to me is where the victory lies. And then again, back to the mental, management of it all. If you're reaching out to 10 people that you're having a great week if 5 or 6 get back to you. If you're reaching out to 10 people you don't know, don't hold those same metrics. It's probably a good week if you get 1 or 2 of them who get back to you. So you got to also have like reasonable metrics and focus on the ones that get back to you. Don't worry about the ones that don't, and then I'm not a religious person, but I kind of hold on to the phrase as another tactic to help me with rejection is God's protection. Like, it probably wasn't meant to be if they're not responding to you, or if they reject you because of something about your background, it probably wouldn't be a pleasant place for you to work there if that's not what they value, and what your path is. So you just got to keep going, put yourself on a quest to find the right place for you. So those are just some of the things that I do, all the mental head games I play with myself to get through things,
Yeah, completely. And it's such an important element that we need to be thinking about consciously. That I read recently in your work, you talked about networking. So you talked about networking while sheltering in place is something everyone needs to master now, whether or not you are searching for a job. So, I mean, I've seen the value of this and how important building that online network now, how important that is. Can you speak a little bit around that and maybe the success you've seen or the success?
I think that it's honestly, I mean, believe me, there's, given the conditions of the situation that we're in, it's clearly not a good thing in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not diminishing what's going on in the world at all when I say this, but I think if there is some good to come out of it, is that this has really been like an ultimate equalizer in the spirit of networking, not in other places at all, in other areas of life at all. But, everybody's operating from a place, of not being able to meet in person for interviews, right? I mean, some people are going to work in person, but they're not valuing, or they're not putting an essential value on meeting in person for an interview. So even if it's an in-person type of work scenario, the recruitment process is still very much online, even for those essential companies. So, I mean, when I say it's been the ultimate equalizer, I'm really talking about just this recruitment process for the most part. Everyone's in the same boat. Everyone is awkward on video. Everyone is trying to figure out the light in their house and, and not a professional, I mean, even here, like, I mean, I'm normally in this corner and the light is great, and today it's just really not so great. And so like, I'm like, all right, whatever, like, you just got to roll with it. And we're all human and we're all doing the best we can. And I find that, I wrote an article a few years ago about, mistakes on interviewing and mistakes on, in corporate communications with, and I find that, this whole online networking thing, I think you really see what somebody's made of based on how they roll with like the hiccups. you know, and that's going to give an employer an amazing sign of what you're going to be like on the job. And frankly, how you're, you know, as the candidate, you're going to see what kind of employer culture they have based on how they roll with the mistakes either that you make or they make or both, right? So like, there's so much humanity in all this now. And, you know, I think that to me is really where the ultimate equalizer is. I think as somebody who might be interviewing, then if you can focus on the fact of what you're trying to make better, you know, or what you accept about yourself, and not think, I'm not good at this, you know, or I'm at a disadvantage because I can't get an in-person interview. Well, everyone is, you know, so you're no different. So try to be better within the confines of where we're at. You know, accept the situation for what it is. I'm not saying that means it's okay. And then operate within the boundaries of that situation. And, you know, and do the best that you can within it. And I think that in and of itself, symbolically as well as literally, tells a potential employer how you're able to, you know, keep moving forward. You know, it kind of comes back to that. So people are desperate for connection. You know, they need help. So I just think if you, again, ethically take advantage of that situation by just reaching out to people, offer to talk, it's focus on the ones that reply, build upon that. I think that's where the opportunity lies for most situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen so much success on LinkedIn in terms of just my approach has just been to connect, and my network has grown bigger, and there have been opportunities that have just come my way just as a result of, you know, connecting with people in this time, because we all need it, as you say.
Yeah.
And it's something we can all be doing, no matter what our circumstances are, no matter what level we are. This is a tactic that we can all be doing right now, and quite effectively with things like LinkedIn, you know, being.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine going through this without the technological capacity that we have? I mean, it would just be insane, right? I mean, we'd be sending letters all day, you know, waiting 3 weeks for a response, you know, if we got lucky. And nobody would be at the office that we'd send it to anyway. So, you know, so it would just be crazy. So I just think we have to, I mean, look, there's so many opportunities to look at what's wrong and what's not working, right? I mean, you know, my teenage kids are very good at telling me that every day. And they'll say that I'm very good at doing that too. But I think in general, you know, I'm joking, but like, as I tell clients, I tell my kids, I have to remind myself, family members, friends, we have to just look at what's possible. You know, in the smallest situations, like there's 80 ways something's not going to work. There's 30 ways it's already not working. But I think we really just have to look for the few ways it's possible and how it can work. And I think those people are really going to like change the world, you know, like, you know, change their small world, change a big world, change the environment around them, the people around them. I think the people who believe in possibilities of no matter how difficult it is, they're those of us who think that way. And it's hard to do every day, you know, and most of us aren't doing it every day. But if you're doing it at least part of the time, there's a lot of hope in that.
Absolutely. And that actually aligns with the research. So the psychology shows that we're wired for negativity over positivity. It's called negativity bias. And actually, it's a survival tactic that we gravitate, we experience negativity more powerfully. So we would be more upset about losing 100 pounds over the pleasure of gaining 100 pounds. So we experience the negative emotion more powerfully. So and the research shows that you have to offset that negativity. So I think it's like it's like 6 times the amount of positivity that you need to inject into your life to kind of balance that negativity.
I believe it. I believe it. I mean, and you know, and fear is a powerful thing, you know, and obviously fear in many ways is healthy, you know, because it protects us and that sort of thing. But I think it can also be very paralytic, you know, and I had that for a long period of time earlier in my life. And I'm glad that it's, you know, at bay most days for me now, but it's, I think the cure, you know, for me, so to speak, And I still have to work at it every day, is just looking at what's possible, and that I feel like you have to always just look at how can you make it work? What's possible? The people who can make something out of nothing, those are the people who are going to get us out of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think those are the people that are getting hired.
Yeah.
Like if I really look at like a common, semi-common trait amongst our clients who are getting hired, and it's not this scientific study, it's really more of an observation, is they're the people that, not that they don't have bad days, not that they're not waking up, heavy in the morning and not sure what to do for the day, but they just, whatever's in front of them, they try to see what's possible, of how to, get the challenge turned around, get the opportunity ethically capitalized on, but like, where is it possible, while accepting, the realities that we're contending with, so I think that's a common trait, is just, that resiliency, to use a very overused word nowadays, but it's really the people who just can, move past the adversity and just see what's possible and act on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And my final question is around, it might be a bit of an odd one, but it's for those that are not necessarily, haven't lost their jobs, they've not been made furloughed, but perhaps they were kind of ready for that next step, right? And they wanted out of their company, and now they're feeling stuck, and now they fear, obviously they don't want to make a move now. What would you say to those people who are just feeling a bit?
So if you feel stuck in your job, I would suggest you do an exercise of gratitude, and really find some gratitude around your current employer, even if it's something as simple as, I'm grateful to be paid while I look for another job. Right? It can sometimes be that simple, right? Because you could be unpaid and looking for a job. So I think if you can at least wrap around, literally take out a sheet of paper, number 1 through 10, and come up with as many as you can of why you're grateful to your current employer. Whether it's something about your boss, something about your coworkers, people you've met that you wouldn't have met if you weren't working there. Again, the paycheck, right? It can be really simple, basic needs stuff. It can be really heady things that you're grateful for. I think you got to start with some gratitude, and then just, continue to look. Like I said, there's essential companies that are hiring. There's forward-thinking companies that are hiring. There are companies that are downsizing in the spirit of being fiscally responsible. They're not, being fiscally, torn apart. And they may need someone who's a turnaround specialist, and that's what you do. And even though they're laying off, you might be the person to come in and help them. So I think that you just keep looking, and you try to be the hero to the best of your ability at your current employer. Show some have some gratitude for where you're at, no matter what the challenges are. And, and just, again, I guess the theme of the day is then keep moving forward.
Right, Lisa, thank you so much for all of these absolute gems. Where can people go to find you, to hear more about what you do and some of the stuff that you offer?
Our executive services are at chameleonresumes.com, and our professional level services are at joblandingacademy.com. And, anyone who wants to reach out on LinkedIn or any other social media channels, I'm usually pretty easy to find, but definitely most prolific on LinkedIn. And I think that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been really a joy. Your energy is radiant. Thank you so much.
This has been fun. All right. Bye all.
All right.